Gem. We have been experimenting with SVM, the Xolana virtual machine. Now it's time to expand our test, invite more validators to the Xolana testnet so we can measure how it holds up. Xolana is our testnet SVM for continuous research into SVM and more precisely how that will fit into the X1 architecture. Will it be a module? Will it be a foundation? We recently launched Solsen, which for the last 10 days since launched have moved the spam away from Xolana and congested in doing so 20 to 35% of the slots continuously. And this is on Xolana mainnet beta with 4 threads. We target parallelization local fee markets by separating the minting from the proof of work mining. On Xolana, the slots are 400 milliseconds and the compute units per slot are 48 million. One Solsen transaction is 1.1 million compute units, and that's also why we see that the true TPS number on Xolana has nearly halved since Solsen entered the slots. The table has then turned. We're not spammers anymore, we're spam filters. But it turns out it's always been about correctly pricing block space all along. So far we made many tests with the Xolana network, which is a straight Xolana fork with some modifications. So we remained the slot times in this test, 400 milliseconds. We remained the compute units per slot, 48 million. But we expanded the threads from 4 to 24. And what we can see is we then can achieve above 73,000 TPS. This is done by 3 nodes. But what it shows is the potential with the SVM. An optimized phantom fork could in comparison take us to 9,000 TPS. So if we call this our upper limit for now and then ask ourselves, how can we maintain that with a heterogeneous network of nodes with varying quality and a hell of a lot more gossip? So how can we scale this with hardware and scale decentralize the validator set? Because you can't reach this level with low quality nodes in a heterogeneous network. Of course, we already solved this theoretically with our X1 DAG AI subcommittee solution, where we choose a subcommittee of the validator sets for each epoch based on performance, uptime, and predictive analysis. So we continuously have the very best nodes to validate. We would like to see the performance of this with 100 or so nodes first. So if you want to be part of the coolest Xolana fork, where we tweak things to the max with no shame, then I will tell you exactly how you can become a validator with just a few steps in this tutorial. You don't need any coding or terminal experience whatsoever, just follow. So what you do is you just go to x1.wiki/Xolana. This is a process how you can become a validator. This is done by Zen Artist, who is the head hashhead of the notorious Hash Asians. He and MMC are taking things to the next level all the time. And this documentation is world-class in being correct and updated as well. There's a few steps I will leave out in my tutorial that you don't really need to become a validator. That's installing Rust cargo and downloading latest source code and build and whatnot. But guys, enough why, let's make babies. So this is the process. It's very easy to start and run a validator on Xolana. Just follow these 10 steps and you're up and running. We will begin by mentioning some of the tech aspects of your server's processor. We need to install the Xolana client, and then we also need to tune the system so we can open up the server's buffers. When the system is prepared, the way validator management works with Xolana is by having 4 to 5 key pairs with dedicated functions. So we will start setting those up. We then need to switch to the Xolana network, of course, and we need to fund the default wallet. And already here, we are ready to have a read-only node up and running. So you could stop there and just tune into the system. It's very good for decentralization as well. But with just a few extra steps, you can then create and run a validator node. For that, we basically just need to fund and create accounts of the created key pairs and start staking. And that's it. You're then ready to run the validator node. We will finish off the tutorial with some monitoring techniques to use to oversee the validation, as well as this reboot process, which you can practice what you just did all over again, which also covers deactivating, unstaking, and withdrawing your stake. We're going to need a beefy server, and why is it so? One of the reasons is throughput, because we're only limited by hardware. So the number of transactions that can hit a node can be quite large compared to Ethereum. On Ethereum, the protocol limits to a single thread and 12 seconds timing of blocks slow things down a lot. The throughput of data can pack about 300 transactions in 12 seconds. So that's 25 TPS on Ethereum. Just go to Etherscan right now and see how full the blocks are versus how many transactions are in them. Divide by 12 for seconds. On Solana, we have 65,000 TPS in 400 millisecond slots. For that, we need a beefy server. Our own tests with Solana testnet, we have 29,000 transactions in 400 millisecond slots. So that's why we can have 73,000 transactions per second. So we have with Ethereum 25 transactions per second and 12-second block times versus 75,000 TPS on 400 millisecond slots. The processor spec for this then is you need a minimum of 24 threads or 12 cores, 3 gigahertz the CPU clock speed, how fast the CPU is, and 128 gigabytes RAM memory capacity. So many nodes have 64, but it needs to be 128. An example of this could be AMD Ryzen 5900, which would work very well. The biggest downside of this is of course the cost. But we don't see the increase in price as an issue, because in case we do decide to adopt SVM, we can always make subsidies to server cost like Solana does today. Hardware scales with time to our benefit here, and the cost reduce with time. So see if you can get one from Latitude, Interserver, Xolana, or somewhere else. At this time, the network is so small, so you can get away with a smaller processor spec. But there are some workarounds also that I will show you how you can make it work early on. But if you do get errors, it's most likely because your machine is not strong enough. So find a good server and log in. So the first thing we need to do is install the Solana client, and right now we're using the Solana release version 1.18.15. So all we need to do is copy paste this command, and now it's going to install the Solana client. I already have Solana client installed on the server, so it's going to take a little bit longer time for you. If this comes up, you just copy paste this export path and execute that, or log in and log out will do the trick as well. What it does, it lets my shell environment to interact with the new installed programs. So it tells my terminal where the programs are. We then can do Solana space -- version, just to double check that we have the right version installed. So here we can see 1.18.15, which is what we try to install. Great success. Let's move on. The next thing we will do is tune the server settings. We want to open up the server buffers, the amount of memory dedicated for network data to be transmitted across, for network to be faster than usual. So more buffer is good. The first thing we want to do then is to optimize the system control knobs to increase the UDP buffer size, increase the memory mapped files limit, and increase the number of allowed file descriptions. So we just basically copy paste all of this and run it. Need to put in the password you have. And then we need to execute what we just did with this command. Looks great. And then we also need to increase the systems and session file limits by opening up the system.conf file. And we do that with nano. So now we open up that system.conf file, and at the end, we're gonna add this default limit no file equals 1 million, which I've already done. So what you do when you add that, you just save this by Control X and say yes, and it's done. Then we need to execute this configuration by running this. And we're done. So what I would suggest is to log out and log in again for these changes to take effect. So you can just Control D, you're logged out, and we log in again. There we go. Can just clear everything off. And we're done with the system tuning and all the system preparations. So now we can move on and start creating our read-only node. We need 4 key pairs to become a validator that's validating. You don't need all 4 in order to have a read-only node, but it takes no extra time just to create them all anyways. So the first thing we need is a default wallet. So we're going to call that ID. And then we need an identity account that will pay for votes. We need to create a vote key pair, so we can have a vote account to cast votes on proposed blocks. And then we need to create a stake key pair, so we can stake. Now, per Solana default recommendations, you need a 5th key pair for withdraw, which allows you to withdraw from stake when you want, but you don't need to have a separate withdraw. We can just use the original id.json as the withdrawer. So let's go ahead and create all of these key pairs. You always need to know where you have your key pairs with strict discipline. And in the command, we are instructing to save them with the path config.solana so we can keep track of them. And as long as you include this, it doesn't matter where you're creating them, they will end up in this path anyway. So let's go ahead and create all 4 of them at once. And just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna copy all of them over to my Miro so we can keep track of this as we move along. So here what we have is our ID pub key, our identity pub key, our vote pub key, and our stake pub key. And what we can do is just go to the folder where they should be, so config/Solana. And if we do LSL, we can see that we have all of the key pairs right there. And what we can also do is do Solana config set -k id.json, for example. And then if we do Solana address, we can see that this Drew6 here, that should match with what we have here, Drew6. Great success. So now we know that we are on the right path. So let's bring these wherever we go. So now we have the 4 key pairs that we're gonna need for the rest of the tutorial. Now, per default, you're gonna be on Solana mainnet beta, and we can check that by just Solana config get. And we can see right here that we are on the mainnet beta. So what we're gonna do is switch over to the Xolana network with this command, Solana config set -u, and then the Xolana address. And now we switch over. So Solana config get, we can also see now that we are on the right network that we want to be in. Now we need to fund our default wallet. And as we can see here from our previous Solana config get, we are already on the right key pair id.json. But we can also make sure that Solana config set k id.json, of course. And then we do Solana airdrop 100. Now it's requesting 100 sol, and we can do Solana balance just to double check that. So yes, we have 100 sol on this wallet. And now we can, from this, when we want to become validators, distribute to the rest of the accounts where it's needed. But this is basically all you have to do to start the read-only node. Now, to start the node, we're going to use this Solana Validator command. And as you can see right here, we need to specify where your identity and vote.json are with the full path. So if you run pwd, you can see the path you're on right now. And this is, of course, the same path where we created key pairs. And this will be different from you, of course. You need to customize that path. Another noteworthy thing is, you see here I added no proof of history speed test. And if your server gigahash is too slow, your time syncing will be too slow. So you need to have 3 gigahash at least. You can ignore that for now just to get started by adding this no proof of history speed test. And you won't get any errors for it. It's going to work for now with a slower machine if you don't have a 3 gigahash server, but it probably won't work. It's not gonna work in the future. We also added no hop and at the end here, so we can have this run in the background. So let's go ahead and run our read-only node. Bam. And then we do tail f no hop dot out. And this is the matrix! But this doesn't tell us much of anything. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure that we have synced with the network. So we can do the Solana catch up, our local host. And there we can see that we are a few slots behind. So this is how many slots we have synced, and this is how many there are in the network. And then we can also do Solana gossip. to see all the nodes that are connected to the network, whether they are staked or not. So these are just all the nodes, whether they are read-only nodes or validator nodes. And if we check our IP address, this should match the 7VM with our identity that we created before. 7VM for the identity. Great success. So now we know that we are reading the chain. If you, for whatever reason, want to kill the validator, you can do this with the psaux command, grep validator, and you can see that on my server right now, I have this validator running with this number. So we just kill, add this number, and if we do Xolana gossip again now, we should see that it has been removed. Not exactly yet, so let's do it again. There we can see our 7VM was removed from the nodes list. So now we successfully started the read-only node, we started syncing with the network, and we also killed it. So now there's just a few more steps how we can turn this read-only node into a validator, which is what we're gonna do next. Now, to turn this read-only node into a validator, the first thing we need to do is fund our identity account. The identity account will pay for the votes. So let's transfer 10 from the ID, default ID, which we just airdropped 100 into. So the first thing we're gonna need is our pub key for the identity account. And we can see it right here, right? Because we just did the Xolana gossip. But another way to do that is if we Xolana config set k, and then instead of writing it, we know the name of it, right? So we can just do identity.json, and then we do Xolana address, correctly spelled, and then we can see that we have it right here as well. What we can also do now is just to check Xolana balance, and we can see that we have 0 sol in there right now. So what we're gonna do is just switch back to the other key pair. So we're sending from id.json. And we can then use this command. So to transfer sol, we use Xolana transfer. We add the identity pub key. We tell it we want to send 10. And if we just do this, let me show you what's going to happen. It's going to say no. Error the recipient. And this is why if we try to transfer to an account which has 0 balance in it, it's going to think it's a spam or something like that. So we need to add this allow unfunded recipients. So we add this to the command. We can do arrow up to do the same command again. We add allow unfunded recipient, and then it's going to work. So it's finalizing transaction. We do Xolana balance again. I can't spell. Xolana balance. And bam, there we can see that we have 90 sol because we transferred 10. And if we then set to Xolana config set k identity.json. What the hell you say? There we go. And then Xolana balance. 10 sol, we can see that we have in this identity JSON. So the balances should look like this, which we just checked. The ID has 90 now and a little bit less because it deducted a transaction fee, and then we have 10 in our identity. Amazing, let's move on. So now we create the vote account. So we created key pairs. We need to tell the blockchain we will use validators with those keys. So we turn keys into accounts. When we start a node, it identifies your node to the chain with your identity public key. But we need to instruct the chain to use the stake and vote as well. So your vote account is just a record that votes. You're funding it from your identity. So that's why we previously funded it. It needs funding because remember that on Xolana, the validators have to pay to vote. It's literally insane, but it's also interesting. So we're going to use this command, Xolana create vote account, and we're going to instruct it to use the vote key pair and the identity the JSON key pair. And also remember I told you that we don't need this fifth key pair. We're going to instruct it here, this is where we do it, to use the default, the ID key pair as the withdrawer pub key. We're also going to tell it that we want a commission out of 10. So every time someone delegates to your validator, you're going to earn 10% of those suckers. So we're going to use this command now, and we're going to put in our id.json pub key as the withdrawer key. So let's see what happens. It's finalizing the transaction, and then we have a successful signature. So what we can do now is just check that everything is okay. If we check our vote account, so we include this voting pub key here that we have in our JSON for vote.json, and we get some juicy data. So what we can see here is that we have a validator identity, which is our identity JSON. We also have the same as the vote authority, and we have the withdraw authority, which is the id.json. And we can see there that we have a commission of 10%. So then we have successfully created the vote account as well. And we have one more thing to do. Wallah habibi. So let's just clear this out. And now we're going to create a stake account, we're going to fund it, and we're going to stake from it. So we're going to take 10 from our ID account and send it to the stake account. So let's first just switch to the id.json. So we're in that. Let's just check the Xolana, the balance we have right now. So we can see that we have 90 sol in it. And then we're going to use this command. So Xolana create stake account stake.json. So it creates the stake account using the stake.json pub key, and it's going to send 10 sol into it. So we do that. It's finalizing transaction successfully. Now, if we check our Xolana, the balance again, we can see that it deducted 10, which it should. So what we can do is just switch to the stake.json key pair. And we should have a balance of 10 there right now. We do. So the current standings of our accounts is that we have 80 in the ID, we have 10 in the identity from before, and we have 10 in the stake, which we just created. So now that we have funded the stake account, let's go ahead and stake those 10 to the Xolana network. So we're going to do a delegate stake operation, and we need to use it from the authority, which is the id.json. So we're switching to that, and then we do this command: Xolana delegate stake.json vote.json. I don't actually know why the vote.json needs to be there, but it needs to be there. So we go ahead and do that. We're finalizing that transaction. It's great. So now we want to check the status of the condition of our stake. So we can do this command: Xolana stake account stake.json. And here we can see that we have a balance of 10. We have a delegated stake of 9. We have an active stake of 9 as well. So we have the delegated vote account address, the stake authority, and the withdraw authority, which we set previously. So perfect. Now we created a stake account, we funded it, and we staked on the Xolana network. And now we're ready to run the validator. So let's start the validator. We're using the exact same command as before, only that the system will recognize our funding magic and now sees us as a validator. So we run the command with this, and then we of course tailf nohop.out, and we can see it's running. Beautiful, beautiful. But this again, this is just gibberish, so how do we decode what goes on here? So what we can do is run some commands to analyze our validating. So the first thing we can do is, of course, Xolana gossip, just to see that we are up on the network. And here we can see that we have our identity, which we recognize, the 7VM. So we can see that we are part of the nodes. Another thing we can do is Xolana validators. And what we'll do is get us a list. Let me just expand this a little bit. It will get us a list where we have our identity here. And this will, Xolana validators will just show the validators. So we have our identity account, we have the vote account, we have the commission, We have last vote. We have credits. This is carbon credits. If you want to move more than 2 kilometers from your house, it's going to be useful if Biden wins the election. You can see the version the different validators are running, how much stake they have, and how much percent of the network that they currently control. You also can see the active stake, the current stake, and the liquid stake. So the liquid stake is validators who are not making votes for whatever reason. It can be that they are too slow to make votes. It could also be that the identity is not funded or for whatever reason. And we can also see the stake by version. And another thing we want to check is, of course, Solana catch up. So we can see that if we caught up to the latest slots, and we can see here I'm more or less aligned. I'm 1 slot behind. So it looks pretty good. I've caught up with the network. So you want to check that. But another thing you can also do is monitor. So monitor Validator, because that will give you more information. Because this Solana catch-up will just give you a glimpse. But monitor the ledger will give you more data. So it will tell you your identity, the Genesis hash, and it will show you here in real time how it's performing with keeping up with the slots. Also, we can do Solana leader schedule and see which leaders are up and coming to be leader of the network. So that's just a few commands to see that our validators is working properly. So if you get to this stage, great success, well done, you did it. Choo-choo! Now, if you want to kill the validator, you can do just like we did before. So we did the Pius aux. So we did the Pius aux. And we take the validator and we take the number and we kill it. So now if we check Solana validators, we should be removed from this list. We're not already, but you can see that it's been terminated. So if we do it again, the 7VM, keep track of this one, should be removed. More specifically, it won't be removed, but you will have this warning triangle to indicate that something is wrong, which it should be because we killed the validator. So congratulations, you're now part of history in the making. You're now running a Solana validator, or you know how to at least. First time you do this, it's overwhelming as everything else. I really do suggest you follow the reboot program so you can do this process 5 times. The number 5th time, it will be very, very easy, everything. Because it's really a very smooth process. I love the work Solana guys have done with this. You just have to be aware of what you're doing. So we're gonna clean the slate here so you can start from scratch. But at the same time, we're gonna cover how you can deactivate unstake and withdraw the stake. So the first thing we wanna do is get our stake.json pub key, which we're gonna need. And we can see here, it should end with the CFWD, but you can also use this command, Solana account stake.json. So we can see the, here we go. The public key is CFWD, and we have some information about the stake as well. We can see the balance, for instance. So what we're gonna do is deactivate the stake. So we do Solana deactivate stake, and then we use the stake account. So that's the command to deactivate the stake. It's finalizing that transaction. And we can see now that when we deactivate the state, if we do Solana validators, it should also disappear from the list. It hasn't yet, so why hasn't it? So we can see the progress if we do Solana stake account stake.json, and it will see that is delegated stake of 10 active stake. But you can see here, stake deactivates starting from epoch 274. So if we do Solana epoch, we can see which epoch it is right now. It is 274. So if we do Solana validators again, it's not disappeared yet. We wait a little bit. One epoch is 500 slots. So, that should be about 3 minutes, I think. So let's check now. Solana validators. And bam, here we can see that we disappeared from the active validators list. Perfect. And then we need to withdraw the stake because we want to send it somewhere else. So we're going to use this command, Xolana withdraw stake. So we need the stake account, the recipient address, let's put it back to ID, the amount, and then we don't really need that. And then how much. So we do Xolana withdraw stake. So we need the stake account address, which is this one. Stake account address. And we need the recipient address. So let's get it back here. And we want to send 10, because that's what we have. So let's do that. Finalizing transaction. So let's verify Xolana config set key pair to stake.json. And then we do Xolana balance. So we can see it's almost 0. And then let's see that we get something in our default. And there we're back to 90. Great success. So now we deactivated the stake, then we withdrew the stake, and we send that to our default wallet. Now the reason that is 2 steps, because if you have a lot of staked and unstaked right away, it can cause disturbance on the network, which we saw on Phantom. Now, if you want to reboot everything, you can also delete your key pairs, but only do this in your testnet environment and really don't care about those key pairs whatsoever. So what we can do is we can see our key pairs right here. We have our ID, identity, stake, and vote.json. We're going to remove them, so we can remove them all at the same time by rm star.json. So it's going to remove all the JSON files in this folder. Bam, and what we also want to do is remove the ledger. So when we start again, we can just have a fresh, clean slate. So we're going to do that by that. So we do LSL again. Now we can see that the ledger and the JSON files are gone. So if we do Xolana gossip as well, we can see that we're not even on this node list either, which we shouldn't be. So bam, guys, there you have it. Create your Xolana nodes. Let's fucking spank the shit out of it. Okay? So let's just finish off by a quick overview what we did in this tutorial. We talked a little bit about the specs that's needed to run a Xolana node. They need to be a bit more beefy. We installed the Xolana client. We tuned the system. We created 4 key pairs. We chose the network, the Xolana network, how to switch with that. We funded the default wallet. We funded the identity wallet. And then we started the read-only node. So now we know also how to check that if we sync with the chain or not. And then we converted this read-only node to a validator node by funding the identity account. We created vote account, we created stake account, we funded it, we staked it, and then we start and monitor the validator process. And lastly, we also went through how to reboot this. So now basically you can just start fresh and do it all over again. And trust me, if you do this a few times, it's going to be very smooth. And that's it. Let's spank the shit out of this network, Xolana.